everyone. I can see some of you already joining in, so we'll go ahead and kick things off in just a minute here. But before I hand it over to Alan, I wanted to take a moment to thank our moderator and our panelists for being here today. Alan, at this point, you're a seasoned guest moderator on Dune's webinars, and we're really excited to have you back. Alan works in GRC Engineering at Microsoft, so not only is he living this topic day to day, but he's also one of the most genuinely curious people we get to work with, so he'll definitely be getting deep into questions here today. We're also joined by an incredible panel, James Tabron from Aquia, Ethan Troy from TRM Labs, and Ryan Schoeller from Treasure Data. They're some of the best people you can learn from on this topic, so we're very lucky to have them here with us today. GRC engineering is a topic that's getting a lot of attention right now, but it's evolving and means different things depending on the organization. So we're really excited to get into this conversation. And with that, I'll hand it over to Alan to kick us off.
Hey everybody. Yes, I am very excited to moderate this topic. This new term, GRC engineering, is like blown up across LinkedIn, job descriptions, conference agendas. People are talking about it, in the last year or so. But in reality, I think it's still one of the least clearly defined roles in modern security and compliance programs. Most orgs are feeling the same pressures, right? Audits are increasing, environments are changing faster. Traditional spreadsheet and ticket-driven GRC just doesn't scale. So what we're seeing emerge is a new function that blends engineering, automation, system design directly into risk and compliance and how they're managed. So today's goal is not to add to the buzz, right, about what is GRC engineering. It's to really to unpack what GRC engineering means to different people that are doing this real work at their organizations, how their teams define it, how it operates day to day, and where it's actually delivering real value versus automation theater. And I'm so happy to be joined by these three gentlemen on the panel here who have years of experience, living and breathing this topic, and are going to share their experiences about what GRC engineering means to each one of them and what they're doing at their own organization. So. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's go James, Ethan, and then Ryan in that order. The question is, how do you define GRC engineering, and how is GRC engineering working, at each of your organizations? Go for it, James.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Really glad to be a part of this panel talking on this subject because I think that there's a shift happening in GRC where teams are realizing that utilizing more engineering-focused methodologies to solve common GRC problems is very cost-effective and drives revenue, in my opinion, to a greater degree. So when I think of GRC engineering, the thing that really stands out to me is when I see GRC professionals, or whether or not you come from an engineering background, but when you blend those two to push past the natural boundaries that have been present in traditional GRC programs to start solving the common problems, the repetitive, the manual, long, tedious tasks that are involved in every letter of that word, because the G stands for something totally different, the R and the C. And each of those has a completely different set of functions and activities at any given organization, and they may look completely different. But when professionals start to look past the boundaries of traditional GRC and start to think in a more systems mannered approach or systems way of thinking, but also utilizing every technical tool at their disposal to compress the time that it takes to complete a variety of tasks, to compress the effort and energy and thought space and cognitive load involved with every task, and start to think about what are the technical means that I can use to create efficiencies in this process. Previously, there was a boundary in collecting evidence or assessing controls, in managing audits. I've done all of these things, and it takes a long time to do each and every activity, if I was to list them out, to have a healthy program. But GRC engineering says, I can automate that. And it starts to think at every function, how can we automate this so it requires less time of anyone involved in this process, stakeholders, the people who are actually performing those actions? How can I start finding ways to save time, money, energy, and effort so that the GRC professionals can start thinking more long-term and strategic, as opposed to short-term and manual and tactical, right? And so I think even at a high level, and I think we'll dive a little bit deeper into this as we start talking about this, but GRC engineering collapses or removes the boundary in that was previously there for traditional GRC programs, to start thinking, what are the technical tools that I have at my disposal? What are the resources I have to start compressing this time and automating as much as possible and making it a more efficient and effective process for every stakeholder that's involved? And when I think about what we're doing at Aquia, we have traditionally helped federal agencies who are trying to achieve their authority to operate for, the systems and products that they want to deliver to the public. There's a very involved and rigorous process based on NIST 853 that federal agencies have to undergo if they want to deliver products to the public, right? And that timeline can be 12 to 18 to 24 months. And what we've done at Aquia is we've actually built like a compliance automation engine that will map all of the controls that agency, if they're using a moderate baseline. Typically moderate is where you see most federal agencies land. But let's map those controls to the controls that can be inherited in the cloud. And then what that delta is now we're starting to build solutions and automation, leveraging code and different solutions that we have at our disposal to start closing that gap, to try to get to a place where the organization can now take that 12 to 18 months and maybe compress it to 4 weeks. Right? Excuse me, not 4 weeks. That's really short. That's too aggressive. But I would say somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks, as opposed to 12 to 18 or 24 months, right? Because now you're leveraging, you're squeezing all of the juice out of the cloud. Every service that is available and the way it's configured to gain as many controls to be inherited as possible. And then you're building automation and things like that on top of that to start to close that gap, so that as much of the control assessment process and every process, the SSP, the system security plan generation, is automated as much as possible, where you're looking at every facet of that program and that process to start thinking, how can we eliminate the human that needs to spend time doing that, so that time to deliver those products to the customer and the public starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you think about the ongoing authorization, because in that process, there's an authorizing official that has to review that system security plan, which traditionally is like 400 plus pages. So that takes time. But when you have continuous data flowing into maybe a dashboard or a GRC tool, then that authorizing official doesn't have to spend weeks reviewing a long document. One, it doesn't take weeks to generate that document anymore because the data is flowing into a tool and can generate that programmatically now. But now the authorizing official has continuous data to be able to make an authorized, make a decision on authorization. So there's no need for like a 3-year reassessment, which is also a part of that process, which takes an additionally a long time as well. So now we're just compressing that time so that the federal government can deliver their products to the public much faster.
Awesome. I have to believe like that sets up very, very nicely for FedRoute 20X, right? Which is like the next big requirement? Like, did you guys foresee that coming, or I mean, it just naturally sets it up nicely? So like, was it just coincidence, that FedRoute 20X is like, oh yeah, we're going to be ready for that, no problem. It's not like something we got to go and engineer, specifically for FedRoute 20X. You just already were doing it, and it just kind of sets it up nicely.
We were already doing it, right? Is something that we got into, at least from my understanding, a lot of the programs that we have got into were taking place, much before 20X came out, and we were just trying to deliver solutions to federal spaces that solved a problem, right? We were just really trying to solve a problem, and I think that it really lined up with where 20X is landing and is potentially going. So I would lean more on the side of coincidence than hey, let's align to 20X.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Ethan.
That was a lot, James. I think that's gonna be tough to follow up with. My definition of GRC engineering, I think I would like to sympathize or empathize with a lot of the people watching here that the definition is very elusive. Even myself, in the beginning, I was like, I just kind of did this stuff. I didn't know there was a name for it. When I started doing compliance automation, I got really upset on an assessment. I was on a call for like 8 hours a day, and I'm just thinking like, I could have just automated all of this. I could just ran a script to get all this information. And what I did, I went to the FedRAMP marketplace and I pulled a CSV of the top like 20 reused services on the FedRAMP marketplace, and I was like, I'm sure there's an API for every one of these. And I started a project. It was just local, and it was just funny to me, and I called it Boring Audit Automation. And I looked up every one of those services, and then figured out a way to go reach out to the API. Oh, I can get this information. Oh, now I can connect it to the compliance requirement, and then I can just spit this out into something that I can use as evidence and the client can use as evidence. So I bring that up because that I think for a lot of people, compliance automation is like the first thing that they're introduced to with GRC engineering. I think that's only the tip of the iceberg. I think it starts with the automate the boring stuff or automate the stupid stuff, the stuff that takes a long time, and then you move on from there, and you start to ask the question of how can you do this better? And I think I see a lot of people posting compliance automation stuff, and I think that's beautiful and it's awesome because I can see it happening in real time. As everyone is like, well, okay, if I can do this, then what does that mean? What more information can I get? What more can I do for the business? And for me, from being part of the 20X process on the assessment side with those early clients, it really became evident to me that this is all about going back to the business. For years, security teams did a lot of work, and the way of gathering assurance of that work was to do an audit, right? So the reason why you do a SOC 2, you do a FedRAMP, you do whatever audit you do is because whoever's going to buy from you wants assurance that you're doing the right things. And I think what GRC engineering is doing is that evolution of instead of me just getting that audit certification, which is still going to be relevant for a while now, but how can you further show, trust and assurance to your potential customers by putting in some engineering principles in there, some automations in there. And then the thing we saw with 20X was that, okay, instead of doing an assessment once a year or, when you have a significant change, how could you show that, 365 days a year? And like I said, I think it goes back to building better businesses, and the way you build these better businesses is kind of taking a step back and seeing the lay of the land. Okay, what is the point of all this? The whole point of all this stuff is that you want to sell to customers, you want to do the right thing, you want to show them that you're doing the right thing. How can you do that better with the technology and the tools that you have in place? And how can you not just say, hey, this is the way it's been done, this is the way we're going to keep doing it? How can you do things a better way? I think engineers have that itch to kind of always do things a better way, maybe too much. You know, there's a lot of over engineering out there, and you could also over GRC engineer, I think. But I think just getting the conversation going of like, okay, we have an audit, you have, you know, X amount of things that you have to worry about this year. How can we do this better? Does it make sense to put it in a spreadsheet? Maybe it does. Maybe you only have like 2 people working on the whole thing, and that's what they're comfortable with. Maybe they're a little bit more technical. Maybe they'll pick up something like an N8N, which like they don't have to know, you know, tons of code, but they can do workflows. Maybe they like to be in a terminal. I love to be in a terminal. And I've come to the realization, I was like, everybody's not going to like that, right? But there's going to be some parts of the team where I might work better with than some other people. So it's going to look completely different at every organization, I think, based on, you know, what they're doing, the scope of the team. It's going to be completely different if you're focused on just one certification compared to where if you're a global organization and you're worried about certifications in 50 plus countries. So yeah, I think the too long don't read on what is GRC engineering. It's taking a look at what you have to do, and that might just be an audit, and how can you do it better? And then going from there, you know, following the rabbit hole and saying, okay, how can we do this better? How can we provide for the business better? How can we show the work of the security engineers? Because oftentimes security does really good work and it goes unnoticed until there's a breach or until there's a situation that happens. So you don't actually know what the value of that security work is, right? So an event happens and then it costs the business X amount of dollars. So now other security teams can go and say, well, you know, that's our value right there. That you see that in the news, that's our value. So I think GRC engineering has this unique way where you can actually show that work, you know, with automations, not just by passing the audits, but by keeping these things. I think James touched on it of, you know, really putting engineering and GRC at every point in the cycle of the SDLC. And that's I think where things are going to go. I think honestly that I think independent certifications are going to be less important, and people and organizations that can show trust better are going to be more competitive in the marketplace. Because, you know, if I was going to buy something today and you could show me, you know, robust security 365 days a year, I'm probably going to buy you over somebody that just has a certification that they did get, you know, last year. And I can trust that more. So that's what this all goes back to, is building better businesses, selling better products, being more secure, and all those things kind of line up. They're all in alignment. So I think this has been coming for a long time. I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of organizations were simultaneously doing something like 20X when 20X just popped out. From talking with a lot of clients back when I was at Fortune, talking to a lot of engineers, they were like, we were doing this. they didn't tell me they were doing it. It's just that because of the way the frameworks work, they had to do something else. So from a lot of conversations I had, a lot of the engineers were like immediately, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we could do that. We've been doing that. You just need to tell us. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the GRC traditional members of those teams are kind of taking a step back, like, oh, wait, you know, where do I fit in? And I think that's why this talk is important, because a lot of people are trying to, you know, honestly figure out, okay, if things are changing like this, like, where do I fit into all of this? And I think it's just like you look at the business and think about how do you do things better in the business. Everyone kind of has to look at themselves and think, you know, do I need to go get some more skills? Do I need to understand different things? Do I need to open up my mind to different ideas that I haven't done before? I think that's it. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole. I'm sure we're going to talk about other topics, but I want to give Ryan some time to talk. But yeah, it's just about doing things better. That's what I think.
All right. Thank you, Ethan. So seems like you were doing GRC engineering before it even became like the cool new term. And, you know, thank goodness you didn't coin the term boring automation. I think GRC engineering has a better ring to it. Real quick, what are you doing at TRM Labs now? I know it's a recent role change for you. What are you doing there?
It's my first week, and yeah, I will be working on all the GRC engineering elements at TRM, kind of building that out. So it's really early to say, but the company is very, publicly AI native. I think our CEO went out and wrote a blog about how all the managers have built, agents and stuff. So I'm just I was doing a lot of this work on the side. If you follow me on LinkedIn, doing a lot of work on, open source ways of using AI, and I've been involved with AI since, GPT-1. And I talked to James about this. We used to have secret groups to talk about this stuff because it was taboo. But now everybody wants to know about AI, and I'm just, gonna be contributing to those efforts over at TRM to figure out how can we do things better. Yeah.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you. Ryan, go for it.
Yeah, I'll give my concise version because I don't want to repeat what the gentleman said, because honestly I agree with a lot of what you guys said. Ethan, it's funny you say that elusive, like GRC engineering is elusive. Honestly, I would agree. I think a lot of folks in the GRC world have been doing some of these things, but there was never like a brand to it or like an easy, simple way to describe what it is. And also, I think in some way, it's almost like a open acknowledgement that we're all in the GRC community saying, yeah, we acknowledge now we need to do better. And like, this is our commitment. Like, we're adopting the GRC engineering mentality to do better. We're not going to do things manual. We're going to go all in on automation. I work at an org where, Ethan, to your point, like AI native is something that's been driven a long time ago, and like we're all in on using the technology to make our lives easier as it relates to GRC, the program, and then how we serve our stakeholders. So yeah, like I said, I mean, and James also hit on this, like from my point of view, when I think about GRC engineering, one, it starts with that mindset, right? You got to have that systems and design thinking mindset. Like I always tell my team, zoom out. Like whatever your task is or your challenge is, zoom out a little bit. Like literally, like think about, okay, who are the folks you're working with? Like, yes, you might be talking with one person, but like zoom out to see that bigger picture. And then also when you're talking about like how you're trying to solve this, if it's repetitive, I like that, James, like that's my same mindset too, is if it's a repetitive task, which truth be told, like most of GRC is a lot of repetitive tasks, audits, risk assessments, like you could go down the list. Like most of the whole GRC program is repetitive. And, if you show up one day and you're like, I'm going to do it this way because that's how we've always done it. And it's making your stakeholders mad. It's taking you so much time because it's manual. That's the opposite of GRC engineering. Like that's not what we want. We want to see someone show up and say, there's a better way to do this. And not only is there a better way to do this, like I'm also thinking about the better way, how can it scale in the future? Like I'm not just going to automate for automation purposes. I think Ian, you just hit on, or Ethan, you hit on that too. Like automating for the sake of automating is not GRC engineering either. Like that's insanity, that's going to come bite you down the road. But yeah, like I said, for us, at my organization and my team, it's starting with first that mindset. I mean, engineering can come in many different forms. It doesn't always mean someone's literally writing Python code. They might actually just be leaning on like Claude code, quite literally, to do some of the Python code generation. And that's the reality we're in these days, So not only is it that, like there's a lot of low code, no code tools that we use for orchestration and other things. So it can come in so many different forms, but it really starts with that mindset of I have a task, it's probably repeatable, and I want to do a better job. I want to use the technology. I want to make it easier on my stakeholders. And that's likely going to lead to like automation and just things that will advance the GRC program. And honestly, everybody's going to appreciate it at the end of the day. I think outside of the GRC world, a lot of people have been waiting for this.
Got it. Each of you mentioned like it's time. It's long overdue. Why do you think it's taken this long? Right? Like, why do you think if it was an engineering team, it would have been super obvious. Like, why are we doing this manual stuff? Like, automate the thing. Right? Like, it's so obvious, but why do you think it's been so long? Why do you think this has gone on for so long that and only most recently, this is becoming a thing. And, traditional, your typical GRC practitioner is now feeling the heat, right? And feeling the threat of like, hey, I can't continue doing what I've been doing in this kind of old way. I need to evolve, and all eyes are kind of on our function now to evolve. Anybody can answer this question.
I can take it first because I have a strong take on this. I think it's been this way for the longest time because the way things are structured, that's how people get paid. A lot of this work is hourly work. It's not outcome-based work. So what is the motivation for people doing things better when if you do it longer, you get paid more? You know what I'm saying? So if you look at like how the audits are structured, how even like internal teams bill hours for getting this work done, it's all a lot of orgs are doing hourly billed work. It's not outcome-based work. And because of that, there is no motivation to do it better. But if I told you, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars more if you get this done in, half the time that you got it done last year, there would be motivation to do those things. So I think there's a lot of people in places. There are a lot of players that need to mature, and part of that is there's no motivation to mature because like let's just continue doing stuff the way we've always been doing it. Like why change it? A lot of people I think feel like, well, it's not broken to them because it's working for them. It's working for them, but you're not thinking about like how much better it could be. How much better it could be for the business, how much better it could be for the engineers. There's a communication gap a lot with, legacy GRC individuals and the engineering team. And some of that is they just, not listening or not communicating enough. Like, I think if you talk to a lot of engineers, like really talk to them, listen to them. They're like, hey, I'm really working on this groundbreaking project. And now I have to take 6 weeks off to go do this damn assessment. And like, we were right in the middle of things. And now you're pulling me away from work. I have to be in these meetings for 8 hours a day. And we plan to do something this time. So you got to listen to the teams and like understand what their pain points are. And I think the pain point for a lot of teams is like, they're working on really great work and now they have to be pulled away for GRC stuff, right? So what is the answer to that? Okay, how can we figure out how to not get them pulled out into work? Maybe instead of them being on a 9-hour meeting, maybe can we get that meeting down to 2 hours if we do some automation? Maybe we can reach out at different points around the process, put some GRC in the pipeline so they don't just get smacked, at the yearly audit. Again, this goes back to, I think a lot of people are just kind of used to doing things the way they're used to getting done. And we don't work in a typically outcome-based environment. It's an hourly-based environment. And I think that needs to change. People need to go and get paid based off of the value they bring to the table. And that's all around. I think auditors, GRC professionals, everyone, like what is the value you bring? And I think that's why GRC engineering is so powerful, is because you can actually show value a lot differently. A big part of the reasons why for FedRAMP 20X, they call them key security indicators, because that sounds very similar to key performance indicators, right? There's a big reason for that, because a lot of businesses can track key performance indicators, but we don't have that for security. We have controls. You have to do this thing and you have to check it off in the box, and then you can go back to the fun part of your job. So we need to move to outcome-based environment. And I think once we go to that, people will say, well, I want the best products. I want the best products. I want the fastest products. I want the outcomes that help me sell to more customers and prove more assurance and can do these activities a lot better. So that's my take.
Yeah, I have a take on this, and I'll provide I think a slightly different perspective than Ethan, but I think there's some correlation as well. When I early in my GRC journey, I had the desire to learn Python. This was about a decade ago, and I had a leader ask me, "What are you doing that for? You're in GRC. What are you trying to learn Python for?" Because during that time, it was kind of seen that GRC was like a gateway into security engineering. And so the problem that a lot of leaders had during that time was this GRC thing is very manual. Nobody really wants to do it. It's, a bunch of controls and words, and, there's a lot of liaising that needs to go on, interpretation of the controls, understanding, working with auditors, providing screenshots. And that's just managing an audit for controls. That's not performing risk assessment, risk management, vulnerability management. That's not writing policies. That's not owning third-party risk management. That's not, security questionnaires and answering that, right? So during that time, like, nobody really wanted to do the work. And so it was kind of seen as like, you're only here because you want to really be a security engineer or a hacker or something like that. You want to be one of the cool professions. You want to be on the cool side of security. GRC is not the cool side of security, right? So I think all of that to say, I think there was a mindset around GRC that is starting to shift. And I do want to call out people like AJ Yon and others who have really been a part of a group of people who have led the charge. Obviously, with AJ's book, which is groundbreaking, and I'm saying that not because AJ's my friend, but because it's the truth, right? And right, it's the truth, right? It's people who have been willing to say, no, this GRC thing is cool and can be cooler, but when you start to blend, there's a hybrid approach to solving these problems that I think people aren't seeing. So it took people to say, I kind of see the how these two worlds can come together. Whereas before that, this was just not viewed as a technical profession, right? And so you had a large group of people who could get into security, not having really any or a very small amount of technical acumen, that could, find very strong, well-paying, long-term careers as GRC professionals. And I want to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I come from that background. I was a GRC professional with some technical acumen that has grown over the years, but I was still able to, have a really solid role and play a significant part in my company's journey to become public, right? And everything that's involved with that. So I say that to say, I think that there was a mindset that needed to be broken down with not only just words, but evidence, right? And once you start to see the data around the time saved in audits, the really not even just time saved in audits as well, but really how improved the security posture of your environment is when you're starting to build systems that are giving you continuous data and analyzing real-time security related signals in the cloud environment and outside of that with different data sources. When you see the visibility that it creates, so now you can actually make better decisions as security leaders into what programs need more funding, what systems really need the attention. We thought it was this, but the data shows us this. We never actually had windows into the data because we didn't know how to bring it all together. Engineers aren't focused on solving GRC related problems. GRC professionals aren't focused typically on solving GRC related problems in an engineering focused approach, right? And so those two left and right brains had to figure out a way to start coming together. And once it happens, there's this aha moment that occurs where you realize it actually should have been this way the whole time. I'll give you another story. I had another leader. We had built out a rapid risk assessment process and program. I was owning that process at my company, and I got really good at it. I was doing them all the time. Same questions. Not so much the same answers, but same process. I went to a leader. I said, hey, I'm about to automate this. I'm going to build some type of application so that I can send people a link. They fill out the questions. There's some business logic and things that are going on behind the scenes. and it gives them a risk score and a set of controls that need to be implemented based on the risk of the system they own. Leader told me, no, I don't want you to do that. And his reason was the human element of connecting with you is what I really need for this security program. I don't want to reduce touch points with our program and we become more of a black box. When they interact with you, we build relationships. I had to respect it, but the desire was there, right? But that was the mindset. And now I think that mindset is different growing in its difference in a lot of places, where now that leader would probably say, yeah, you should have thought about that a long time ago. You should have been wanting to automate that from the beginning. Now, whereas before, that just wasn't a mindset. So I say all this to say, I think there took some pioneers in this way of thinking to start screaming from the rooftops with the evidence, with the data, to start convincing people that there's a better way to do this, and that this profession does not have to be seen as a non-technical profession, that it should start to be seen more as a technical profession, because we have so many tools, especially with APIs and AI, the cloud, all of these tools at our disposal to do these things so much better. So the mindset shift is starting to occur, and I think that it's not going to go back. The genie's out the box, and it's not going back in. So
great stories. The second one especially resonates with me as well, about the human connection. Of engineers don't really understand GRC, and vice versa. It's like that's why you really need that connection to kind of interpret and translate, as opposed to, like you said, just go and do the thing without a real understanding of why you're doing it, what you're doing. Like, is it even complete and accurate and useful for the end consumer, which could be an auditor, right? Awesome. I'm going to switch gears and ask a related question. So everything that you do, right, needs to be funded, greenlit, prioritized, and decided to be more important than something else. GRC engineering, I have to assume, is no different, right? So Ethan and James, you both mentioned that the outcome of a GRC program is, a good chunk of it is to pass audits and get that certification to enable business. Like you said, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Maybe the format of how that is being done, we will evolve, some similar to like 20X. But how do you pitch the work, and how do you sell the work that you want to do, that the GRC team or the GRC engineering team wants to do, to leadership, to where they're going to say, yes, I agree, that is high priority enough to do it? Because I see some teams that are like, okay, well, their most highest priority is to reduce engineering toil, right? Like, we don't want to bother engineers, we don't want to bother developers. They got to do the thing, build all the features, for our company to succeed. Compliance team, you all got to do the thing that makes life easiest, for the engineers. There's like self-serving stuff, doing whatever you can do to not bother them, right? Make it least disruptive. And that doesn't, and right now we don't need a perfect continuous assurance, like all these signals and like all these things, this continuous monitoring system to pass audits. I've also had conversations such as with AJ, like asking, hey, like, you built this great thing. Is it actually making your audits easier? Is the work actually less to get through an audit? And a lot of times the answer is like, well, at least not for the first year, because you got to explain all this stuff to the auditors, and they're going through their old school way of validating. So yes, that's the question. The question is, how are you pitching, the work that you want the GRC team to be doing, or GRC engineering team to be doing, to leadership, to where they're convinced, they're like, yes, I see the value in that, in the broader picture of prioritization across the organization. And then naturally, if you can give an example of like what one of those projects were that was deemed high enough priority, for the team to work on. Ryan, we'll start with you, and then we'll go.
Yeah. Well, honestly, you know what? Something James said about his experience about that manager saying now, today, about automation, you should have thought of that, or why didn't you already think of that? That's a lot of like what we see from our leadership is why are you not automating things? And I think that actually makes the conversation quite easy. Like if we're going to say we're going to prioritize time over here to automate, like automation is top of mind. I don't know about other organizations, but it's top of mind for our organization. And the tooling is there to help. It is making that a lot easier to bring to life. So when we can actually show them, like, here's the task we're going to go work to automate, and here's the outcome of what you will receive, there's really no pushback. And for me, like one of the big things we're working on right now, you know, our leadership, they want to see, like, they come to the GRC team for insights, right? On the risk side, to understand what risks the organization is taking on. They want to be informed. Should they be accepting it? Should they be pushing back on the owners and whatnot? And then on the compliance side, like, we have never thought about GRC as the function that needs to prepare people for the audit. So what we're working on actually is more of like what I call like an insights function. We want to be able to have like a look at any point in time into our actual control, like operating effectiveness, right? We want to be able to look at a set of controls for maybe a single department and say, you know, we're monitoring those controls. Maybe some of it's monitored through a GRC platform. Maybe some of it is stitched together with some other tools or other, you know, pieces of technology outside that platform. And we want to be able to just do like let's look back the last 30 days. How did that organization's controls actually function? And it's not because we want to be ready for the audit. Like the audit, honestly, nowadays, in my opinion, is an afterthought. Like, yes, the auditors are coming around in September. I know it. Nobody's thoroughly excited about it, but it is what it is. We got to do it. But we want to build that insights function to help, one, inform that department, right? If their controls are failing more frequent than they should be, that's going to inform them about risk. Like maybe there's something going on with their processes and their team that they need to pay attention to. And those leaders are all for that. Like they want to be more informed about how the processes, the controls that they own are actually operating. Like that's a welcome thing that they want. So, you know, that's going back to that example. Like that's one thing we're working on. And again, because our culture, our mindset is we are not necessarily looking at the GRC team to help us get audit ready. They want us to take it to that next level. Like we've passed that maturity level. Doing this work is going to help us be audit ready. Just that's a natural byproduct of it. So, you know, because of that mindset and what the leaders want, like this idea of the GRC engineering practices that we bring to that work, you know, I don't know. I will just say I feel maybe I'm lucky. I have to spend a lot of time pitching why we're going to go automate something, because, you know, as a software company, a technology company that's based out of Silicon Valley, like automation is king right now.
Thanks, Ryan. Ethan, we'll go to you. I was just informed that we got tons of questions, so we'll go through like one more question after this, and then I'll open it up and take a look at what people wanted to ask.
Yeah, I see the questions. Business buy-in. I think business buy-in is lots of different ways, but like Ryan is saying, I don't think anyone is like shuddering at automation anymore. I think for years businesses were saying automation, they just kind of didn't know exactly how to do it. I remember early days of being a assessor at Coal-Fire. There was a lot of talk about automation, and I saw some of it. I didn't see all of it. But I think now the tools are so accessible. You know, I was talking to someone the other day. I'm like, is there really even a reason to learn Power BI anymore? Because I can just like tell Claude to make a dashboard for me. You know, so like when you have those like so easily accessible tools, like it just seems so easy to make that decision. But the way I think about finding funding for GRC engineering, because I do think some organizations are struggling because they don't know what the value is to make it. I think a lot of the organizations or companies where you are, right, and Silicon Valley, they get it really quickly. But there are some orgs that are kind of stuck in some older ways. I think the biggest thing is just like pointing things back to the business, how it can help the business. And it's like, how can you help the business make more aggressive decisions? The thing about GRC is not always just about like eliminating risk. Like we know that there's never zero risk, but like if we take a data-centric approach, can we actually move more aggressively as a business in a way that we didn't think that we could go before? Now that we have more information, now we can be more competitive with other businesses. As an auditor, like we used to like interrogate or assess businesses on like budget line items for security stuff, where you guys all know it. We get in a call, we're like, hey, do you have a budget line item for security? And then you get like a redacted sheet and you're like, oh yeah, we're definitely paying for security. And I think about that all the time, is that like now we don't have to do that stupid exercise anymore. Like if you're in AWS, you could probably give me a line by line item of everything that you're paying for in AWS. And guess what? Like you can give that to your auditor, but you can also use that internally with your company of like, maybe we should not pay for this anymore because we're not using it. I've assessed tons of organizations where like they tell me like, we literally just bought this tool for this one function. And maybe, they could take that information, go back to the business of like, is this really the best service? Because maybe it's the most expensive one, but we're only using 1 out of 10 functions on it. Maybe we could use something else that's cheaper and better and serves our purpose better. Again, how do you do that if you don't have the data? And that data is, I think that's part of the job of the GRC engineer, to gather that data, and not just from the audit, but from all the security tools, and then go back to the business and figure out, okay, how can we make better decisions, not just for the audit, but for the business as a whole? How can we, use different tools, save money, maybe spend money in a different lane? AI is a really hot topic. Everybody wants to implement AI right now, but it's like, how do you do it? Well, you have to figure out, okay, we want to figure out some guardrails, some governance frameworks. Okay, ISO 42001 is coming up, and then there's all these AI framework coming out. Okay, so I need to prepare the business of like, okay, we want to move aggressively with AI, but we don't want to get into any issues with compliance that might be coming down the line. So I think the too long don't read again on like, how do you find funding for this GRC engineering stuff is pointing it all back to the business and helping the business make better decisions, and being that like cross-functional component where, I'm constantly working with, legal and the auditors and the security team, and being that person in between, kind of translating things constantly. So.
Thank you, Ethan. James, anything to add on your side? Funding.
No. Funding? No, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think Ryan and Ethan have touched on this really well and covered it. It's showing outcome, it's showing the results, it's showing the data. But I think as we move into this space, I mean, you have a lot of companies say if you're not using AI, you're actually not doing your job very well right now. I mean, I think a lot of us know, have read articles that mention this. So I think it's being able to show the value of it, and I think it's really easy to do that nowadays, right? I don't need any of your engineers to spend any time during the audit. Or now we have far more signals to tell us exactly what systems we actually need to put effort and energy into, because there's critical vulnerabilities throughout those systems that we didn't really have visibility into. Now we can use AI to perform assessments to tell us what the actual risk may be based on several factors, and we may be able to use MCP servers to gather data from outside the company to gain a better idea of what some of that real risk is, as opposed to just isolating what the risk could be based on a limited set of factors. But I think that the tools at our disposal make obtaining funding to do this, and the zeitgeist of the time right now, right? Which I know it's not a word that people use all the time, but I think it's very, it works very well in this context, right? The zeitgeist of the time is, if you're not using AI to get better at your job, produce better results, be more efficient, provide better information and analysis, things of that nature, then you're getting left behind and you're probably not doing your job very well. So, yeah.
100%. 100% agree. All right, I'm looking through some of the long list of comments in the Q&A, many of which aren't questions; they're just kind of comments. And I'm getting a sense that maybe a lot of interest is in like, what do I need to do to level up? Like what all of you said, GRC engineering is a way to handle the kind of the boarding automation stuff, right? So then GRC practitioners can move on to other higher value things, right? Ryan, you mentioned your team is seen as the insights team as opposed to like just getting audit ready and cranking through the things. I think a lot of GRC practitioners and GRC teams are still primarily doing the grinding and the cranking of the machine, right? Like the policies, the annual, approvals, and like the back and forth between the auditors and translating and passing over, just kind of being a middle person between auditor and like service team or engineer, right? Just this is the thing I need, give me it, I'll translate it to the auditors, deal with all the audit stuff. So my question is, I think given a lot of people and GRC practitioners have been focused on that for so long, and that is, they don't really know how to do many things other than that, right? Like just kind of evolve from that. So what are the things, like James, you mentioned this in your first answer, like GRC team members can do other things, right? And take the data that's being spit out of the engineering systems and do more things like with that. So what are those more things that, our viewers could understand that you guys are referencing? Like all the mundane automated, like audit stuff is all done. Like you have continuous signals now, you have audit evidence that's automated, auditors are happy, you have these tools running. So what, as a GRC practitioner, if I look into the future and see a future where this is already built, where's the value that I can provide, back to the business now, if the systems are already flowing?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the systems are already built, like that's really cool. First of all, as a GRC practitioner, I think you should be leveraging AI to build regularly. And I've heard every day, which I think can be somewhat unrealistic because of the rate of evolution for AI right now is insane and off the charts. It's really hard to keep up with. I don't know how people do it, but you have to join the community to really have people hold you accountable so that you stay in the know. But I think you should be leveraging AI to build something weekly, regularly, right? In some way, shape, or form. And it's not just using it like a chat bot or a chat tool or just to find, answers to, things that you could Google. Use it to build and learn and grow. And I think that start thinking about solving problems outside of your typical domain and problem space, right? Because once you start proving, okay, I've got data flowing, the audit is easier, engineers are spending less time, that'll probably honestly get you promoted, to be honest, right? If you can start showing the data around the value that the system and services that you built will bring. But now you start thinking about, I think there's a couple of things. There's one, maturity, program maturity around the systems that you build. Are there ways are there things that we can do to optimize what we've already built? It's built, it's working well, but can it be working better? And I think the second part of this is start thinking about finding ways and additional ways to help your company make money. That is the most important thing that a person can do, is understand how the company makes money and tune your efforts into building solutions and creating efficiencies in areas that help the company make money, right? So I believe leaders and companies love people who don't just say, this is my problem, this is my thing, and I'm just going to get really good at this. You master that thing, but find other ways to help the company make money and start having a business mindset, a business focus and business oriented mindset around solving problems in other areas outside of GRC, which for a lot of people is the entire world that you work in. But being an engineering leader, as I have in the past, I got a chance to step out of that world and see that in the grand scheme of things, It's actually a small part of a very large company. It's a small part of the world that a lot of people don't know about or pay attention to. And that's just the reality, right? But when you're immersed in that world, it's really all you can care about, right? And so I get it. And I think that's a problem that we see across security as a whole, not just GRC, which is a domain of cybersecurity, right? But when you start to step out and realize that there are other problems that can use your expertise, because GRC does touch so many parts of the business, and that's why you need those good soft skills, the ability to partner with people and build bridges as well. So when you add those technical skills, I think you become a very powerful professional, and a very valuable to the organization. So I think it starts with optimization, because once it's built doesn't mean that it's perfect. It can be better. The metrics can be better. The thresholds can be higher or lower depending on the circumstance. And now I'm starting to think about, how do I solve problems on a larger scale outside of what I just own? Because when you build that, you start to see things very differently across the business, and you can see things that other people cannot see. And I think you become very valuable when you step outside of your domain and use the skills that you've learned and acquired in this process to start solving other problems across the business.
Awesome. Quick follow-up to that. James, Ethan, obviously like super stronger on the technical side of GRC engineering, right? It started opening up this call of like, what does GRC engineering mean to you? What is GRC engineering team doing within each of your organizations? This question is, an attempt to not kind of scare, a lot of the GRC practitioners that aren't quite, at that level yet in terms of like the technical skills. So GRC engineering is a function, is a role, right? I think all of the new job descriptions are saying GRC engineering, and these are the things that this person must possess, the qualities and the technical competencies. But GRC is still a team, right? So like GRC engineering could be a role, under the GRC team. So the question is, are there less technical roles that can still be part of the GRC team without officially being a GRC engineer to the definition that probably the two of you would expect, that is still valuable, right? That is still needed? Or is that everything is just like GRC engineering, like they know enough of the GRC part, they're heavy on the engineering part, and it's kind of being this, lack of a better term, like this black box is just running. Like, don't worry about it. Like the GRC hand is handled. Like we have great GRC now because, the GRC engineering team has built this thing. Or is there still value, in having people, on the GRC team that are not so involved in building the systems, but doing other things?
Right. I think there will always be value in having like other opinions, outside opinions, than what is you're set on doing. I think what James was talking about before is that talking about helping other parts of the business. So there's a lot of organizations and businesses that have had the cubicle mindset for so long of like, you stay in this box, you stay in your lane, you do your thing, and that's just showing not as effective, because people with like generalist skills and various experiences are kind of being a little bit more effective now. So I think there will always be value and difference of opinion. Give you a good example. Back when I was at Fortune not too long ago, I had someone come on my team that had just came from college. So she was an analyst, didn't have any experience, but she already had good ideas because she could look at things with a fresh mind, and it was like, hey, like, why are you guys doing this thing this way? And you know what she did? She used ChatGPT and she built an automation so that we could count up some numbers on a spreadsheet a lot faster. And maybe someone else could have done it, but no one else thought about it. And she thought it was like a really important thing. And guess what? When I left, now everybody is using her tool. And she didn't come from like having 10 plus years of experience, which we did have. We have people with 10 plus 15 plus years of experience. She just came out of college, but she had these fresh ideas. She was able to look at things with a unique set of eyes. I think that will always be valuable and I think that's what I valued about working on a team of people with diverse ideas, because I don't know what I don't know. That's also really cool about working with AI agents, because when you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes you're like, this is what I know, but like, is there a better way to solve this problem? And I might be biased and not see things just because my background. I might, me and you, all of us right now in this meeting is like, we might look at something like GRC engineering or any other problem or any other thing, and just have like completely different ideas of going about it, just based on our background and experience. So I think there will always be value in having other people input. I think there will still be value in building up analysts, younger analysts. It's just going to be different. And that's something big I was pushing when I was back at Fortune, is just like, hey guys, I need you guys to learn Python, Linux, networking, these sort of skills. Don't worry about memorizing the controls, because that's not really an important thing. You can always look it up. You can Google it. Like, there was a time where being a knowledge silo was super valuable. You're the person on the team, everything, and then you leave the company and the company's like, crap, we got to go hire another knowledge silo. I don't think we live in that world anymore. Knowledge is very cheap. Like, you can go search anything. Like, if you have, the skills and Google, and you can use AI. So in a world where knowledge is like easily accessible, then the people with creative and unique ideas will excel and be valuable to the process, and even at the analyst level. So that's what I think.
Right. I want to hear from you.
The number one thing I think about when I think about my team and our experience, and where challenges we've had, and where we've brought GRC engineering skills to the table, and where we haven't, I don't foresee ever in the future it coming. I really think about the risk function. Like, when I think about our risk function, and I think about some of our biggest wins and some of our biggest challenges, it's prioritization of remediation. And we're great at identifying risks. We're getting actually very fast at it, for better, for worse. But what ends up happening is, just because you've identified something, and maybe you've gone through like a risk calculation and you slapped a severity on it, maybe your policy says, oh, that's a whatever rating, and that must be fixed in 60 days. Reality is, that doesn't mean that's going to happen. We all know policies are words on paper, and they most often are not actually what's happening like on the ground. And I don't see, I don't see tooling, or an engineer might not even want to be involved in that part where it is largely that conversations that you have to have repeatedly with your risk owners and your stakeholders that have responsibilities related to remediation. You have to talk to them quite frequently and have conversations back and forth to get them to commit to putting something in a roadmap. And then it might get in the roadmap, or it might be slated to be in the roadmap. It might slip. It might get started, but then you have to keep working with them to make sure, is it actually going to remain in Q2 or whatever it is? You have started it, great. Is it on track? Like, a lot of times, yeah, you can kind of boil it down to, well, maybe that could just be a Jira ticket, and there can be an in progress status and some due dates and ETAs. But for those of us that leverage a lot of those ticketing systems, like, sometimes they just go stale. People forget to come back to them. Like, they're great, but also, most often where I see our biggest wins is when the team is having those conversations with the risk owners, and we're just all on the same page. Like, without that, sometimes risks don't go anywhere. Like, they just sit there in the register, and it's not good for anybody. That requires humans. That requires relationships. James hit on it a lot. Like, relationships and having conversations with your stakeholders is extremely important. No tool, no agent, none of that's going to replace the fact that I have to go talk to Alan to really work with your team to make sure you're prioritizing something. You understand some of the things that might not be written down on the Confluence page or Jira ticket or whatever it is. And sometimes that's, like I said, like, that's where we get our biggest wins, is just being on the same page about those conversations.
Awesome. Yeah, I won't name any names, but I've worked with leaders that are like, hey, I know you built this cool thing to, identify all these extra things, that are risks, but we're not gonna be able to, fix all of them. So like, I'd rather, not really see it right now. It's like what I don't know is, better for me at this time, at the stage. So I hear that.
And you've worked at a software company. Like when you're talking to the engineering team, you're also battling product features and product capabilities. Like that, and that's to James's point about like the understanding where your company makes money. We sell software. People buying and using our software is how we make money. Me trying to pull the engineering team away from developing new features and functionality that will inevitably get sold and make us money, that's hard to do. And no Jira ticket. We can write the best detailed write-up of the risk and whatever it is. I have to talk to that person to really get them to commit to it and vie for that time.
Got it. All right, we're already at the end of the session. I was gonna ask a closing round robin question, but I think following just the interest in the Q&A and kind of what we're talking about now about how can GRC practitioners kind of level up and like get deeper into the kind of the GRC engineering space. I'd love it if James and Ethan, you talk about the GRC Engineering Club, right? Give a pitch for that community. It's a fantastic community, what they're all about, and how our viewers and people listening can get into that.
Yeah, I mean it's a life-changing community to be a part of, and I don't say that lightly. And we have had many people provide that type of feedback about this organization, that joining this community has exposed me to things that I would not have been exposed to outside of this community. I happen to be one of them. I started leveraging N8N as an agentic automated workflow platform, and I got some resources to get started from someone in this club. Right. And that opened my mind up to a whole different way of solving problems. It's a community of people who are kind, who are supportive. There are labs to help you get started with learning how to use the terminal, learning how to operate in the cloud, building automation. The AI channel is probably the most exciting channel, and that's because Ethan is in it like 30 hours a day, posting a lot of AI specific resources, and you'll never fall out of contact or out of touch with what's happening in AI inside of this club. But it's also just really good people, good leadership, and people are very engaged as well. And everyone is invested in helping people learn, up-level, upskill, get better, and build the confidence and the skills necessary to go find that GRC engineering role, find the role that you want, change your trajectory, change your life, and be prepared for the future of this profession. Can't speak highly enough about it.
Yeah, I think what I would like to just add is that, like, it's really tough being alive today. There's a lot of crazy things going on. People just kind of trying to find their way. I know tons of people in GRC and maybe outside of GRC just trying to find their way. Having a community of people to just kind of be a sounding board, tell you, hey, things are going to be okay. Hey, I've struggled with the same thing that you struggled with at different parts in the journey. Having that community is really powerful, and I think it'll make a lot of people not feel as alone with all the things that are going on. And just not saying that everyone has to go on the same path. I think AJ has kind of mapped out a really great path for people that want that structured path. But if you're like me, you don't like structured paths. You got the ADHD on hyperdrive. There's also that too, right? So I think it's great having a community, again, having a soundboard, having support, and just having that ability to work with other people. At the end of the day, all the technology in the world, AI in the world, we are all just people trying to make it through and figure out how do we provide something back to our businesses, our families, the society, and that sort of thing. And being a part of the community is great for that sort of thing.
Awesome. Not to mention, you can get some pretty cool swag as evidenced by the shirts that you guys are sporting right now, right? Run GRC. All right. We'll wrap it up now. We're already way over. So thank you, gentlemen, 100 times. This is a great Friday, for me, just being able to pick y'all's brains. Thank you so much. And I think our viewers, thank you a lot as well. So Grace, let's close it out.
Yeah, awesome. This was a really great session. First of all, it is clear that GRC Engineering is playing a significant role in how organizations move towards more scalable, automated, and resilient cyber programs. So thank you again, Alan, Ryan, James, and Ethan, for breaking down how this role is actually being defined, built, and measured across organizations today. And to everyone who joined us, thank you. We really appreciate you being here. For anyone who wants to watch the recording, the replay will be available on our Contrast page shortly after the session ends, and we really hope to see you all at the next one. Thanks.